This is Nelson Rivera. I'm better known as Goldie, the ex-warlord of the Hartford Ghetto Brothers. What you're about to hear is the history of the Hartford Ghetto Brothers, how we started, how it was formed, the foundation, and everything else Ghetto Brothers. Now, New Jersey, New York, there are brother gangs, but Connecticut, we did it a little different. We had our own style. We didn't have the style that New York had, that New Jersey had. So what you're going to hear is Hartford's version of the Ghetto Brothers. This platform is usually saved for New York gangs and New York outlaw gangs, but because people have been asking about Hartford, well, I'm going to give you the story. It all started back in '72 with Benny, Jesu, Chi-Chi, Pete, Goldie, and a few of the other fellas. The foundation was based around sports, basketball, brothers that we all grew up together, wasn't a clique, we weren't a gang, we were just guys that knew each other, that grew up together. And when Benny came from New York, Benny was from 174th and Vice. When he came here to Connecticut, he came with that idea. But Benny at the time wasn't the leader that he turned out to be. So as time went on, we grew, larger and larger, and people started noticing. At the time when Benny arrived here from New York, we all hung around Sacred Heart Church. Now, Sacred Heart Church was like the foundation. I still say that if it wasn't for Sacred Heart Church, there wouldn't be no Ghetto Brothers in Connecticut, in Hartford. I really believe that in my heart, because it was there that brought us all together. It was there that we learned, that we grew. It was there that we talked. It was there where we had the meetings. It was there where we threw parties at. It was there where we got baptized at, where we did our first communion. But it was more than just the church. And it was more than just, it was just a lifestyle. It was part of our life for that era. What people have to understand is that Hartford is a small town. So we didn't have gangs here like New York, Chicago, New Jersey. We had one Spanish gang, the Latin Locals. Then we had the Magnificent 20s, Rat Patrol, and a couple of other black gangs. But as far as Hispanic gang, there was just one. So Benny had this idea to put one together, but at the time he wasn't the man that he grew up to be. So along came Chi-Chi, Jesu, Jose, Pete, and they were the ones that really formed the first Ghetto Brothers. How did that come to be? We were all on the same basketball team. We were just a bunch of guys that grew up together, that hung out. We played basketball, we played football, we would hang around Sacred Heart Church. We go there for tutoring, and that's how the Ghetto Brothers came to be. It was guys that we hung around, we knew each other, we grew up around each other. It wasn't about our turf, or it wasn't that we had issues with anybody else, or we didn't really have no common enemy. Every once in a while, there might have been some kind of static where we would go help each other out, but that's because we grew up together, not because we were a gang, we were a pack. It was just guys that knew each other from the old neighborhood. You could ask 20 Ghetto Brothers the same question, and I assure you that each would probably have a different answer, but that's the way it always is. If you take the number 7, 5 and 2 make 7, 6 and 1 makes 7, 3 and 4 makes 7. 3 different people took 3 different routes but got to the same location. And that's the start with the Ghetto Brothers. If you ask anybody, any ex-ghetto, how did it start? People will have their own little version, their story, but it's their truth. It's what they understand. What I'm trying to do here is bring forth the history, the story, the love, the brotherhood, what happened in the beginning, what happened in the end. I want people to understand that this was a brotherhood. So as to who started the Ghetto Brothers, it wasn't just one guy. There was 3 or 4 guys that started it. As for why, nobody really knows. But we know what happened at the end, and we know what happened in between. Well, the first colors were blue and white, and how that came to be was a few of the younger guys, myself including, and 3 or 4 other guys, we came across with some money that we found. So we went downtown, a couple of us, and we go in this store. And there's only 3 coats. They're blue and white. So we had the guy stitch on our coats, Ghetto Brother Juniors. Never forget this. So after we get our coats made, the 3 of us, we're walking down Albany Avenue where all the big Ghetto Brothers are at. As we come and they notice that 3 of us got the same coat. So as we reach them, the press comes to us and says, I like that. Where did y'all get that from? First of all, I want y'all to take Junior off of there, just leave Ghetto Brothers. What y'all need to do is buy everybody coats. So we went to Railroad Salvage and we get these yellow and blue coats. We call them the Bumblebee jackets. And they were like $7 a piece. So we bought like 40 of them. So everybody had one now. Then we had the name Ghetto Brothers stitched on it. And those were the original official colors. The 3 of us that had the blue and white coats, we got to keep our coats and we could fly them. But the official colors, okay by the president, were the yellow and blue Bumblebee jackets. And as we walked down the streets, we looked at like a beehive just attacking. All you see was a bunch of yellow and blue jackets. And that was how we got the yellow and blue. There's no sentiment or it meant for this, it meant for that. Nah, it was just, that's the coat they had at the time. They were these satin coats. They were like satin. They almost looked like silk, but they were satin. And they looked like sports jacket, almost like baseball jackets. They were yellow and blue, and they shine, especially at night, which wasn't too good of an idea to have a coat like that. But again, that was the only one they had at the store, and with the money and how much they cost, we had enough to get everybody one. So that's what we did, because again, we were like a team anyway. At the beginning, all we had was one division, maybe 30-35 members, and the north end was known as the Clay Hill area. But as the time went on, we started growing more and more people started joining. Eventually, we had close to 100 members just in one division alone. Then later on, as we grew, we had a 2nd division and a 3rd division. 2nd division was in Stowe Village, and the 3rd division was in Chatterock Terrace. Stowe Village is in the north end, deeper in the north end of Hartford, and Chatterock is in the west end, almost by West Hartford. People asked, did you have a brother club or sister club? And for a long time we didn't. We stayed solo because we felt that any other people's problem will become our problem. If you have an enemy, it becomes our enemy. So for many years, we rode solo. And that's how we did it for a long time. Then as time moved on, you get partners, you get friendship, and that's pretty much what we did. We became Brother Gang with the Latin locals, and then later on with the Magnificent 20s. But we shared a good bond with them. As for sisters, we didn't have them. We shied away from that for a long time, and it wasn't until in the 80s, I want to say like the mid 80s, where women started joining and the Ghetto Sisters came out. But in the early 70s, late 70s, we didn't have them. You have to remember that we're in Hartford, so if there wasn't many male gangs, there wasn't going to be any girl gangs as far as that goes. But later on, in the 80s, we opened the doors to the Ghetto Sisters, and they played a big role in our part. And sometimes they say women should stay. No, well, they stood there with us. Sometimes they would sit there in front of us. So when you talk about good memories, you have to remember about the bad as well. And I think none took us more than the passing of Benny and how it was done, who did it, why. To this day, I still don't truly understand it, and I probably won't. I haven't gotten over it, and I probably never will. But everyone suffered from that death. It was almost like getting stabbed in the heart with a double-edged knife. But then you move on, you learn, you don't trust people as much anymore. You try to forget about it, but it keeps coming back. It keeps coming back, and it's haunting. But you think to yourself, what could I have done? Could I have done something different? We don't know what we could have done, but we just move on and keep his memory alive, and he will always be alive in our memory. In 76, I enlisted in the U.S. Army. At the time, I was the vice president of the juniors. I left in 77, and I came back in 80. Things had changed, and they had changed a lot. When I came home, I saw the guys with MC jackets, MC boots, with patches, and I was like, what's this? And they sat me down, explained it to me. I said, yeah, but when I left, it wasn't like this. Well, times had changed, and you have to move with the times. And that's when the patches took more meaning. That's when we put symbolism behind the rockers, the Puerto Rican flag. That's self-explanatory. Us being Ghetto Brothers, like I said, we were different. So we didn't believe in when the Gestapo or the Iron Cross, because we were Puerto Ricans, and we felt that didn't fit our model. Even though everybody else was doing it, that wasn't who we were. We weren't followers, we were leaders. That's what we are, leaders. So we never ever wore Gestapo or Iron Cross, and not to downplay it or say that's wrong. No, it just wasn't who we were. But for anybody else, if it fits, then you wear it. Everybody can't do everything. Everybody can't wear a suit. Suits ain't for everybody. So the same thing with the Iron Cross, the patches, the Gestapo, and the meaning behind it. So we never ever took that route. Some people ask, like, why did you change? Why did y'all go from them jackets to this patches? Again, because times were changing, and we had new leadership in place, and this is the route that Benny wanted to go. So when we went that route, my younger brother came up with the idea of placing the flag, the Puerto Rican flag, on a jean jacket, and with the bullets in the rockers. So he had my older sister sew it on for him, and when they were done, they looked beautiful, especially with that Puerto Rican flag in the middle, and that's what we represented. We never really had that communication with New York, New Jersey, like I would like to have had, where we would meet maybe once every month, or maybe, once every 2 months. but we never really did that. We went over there a few times, but not as much as I would have loved to, to build that bond, build that trust with the other brothers. But because we were in Connecticut and we're, a small city, we never really had that with them, with New York or with New Jersey, or maybe with some other clubs, in some other state. For New York, we know that the Ghetto Brother had maybe 20, 25 divisions all over Manhattan, the Bronx, Brooklyn. We were a bunch of kids from the hood, and we were used to people telling us, no, you can't, no, you won't, you can't, there's no way. And out of that, we had a mayor, we had a public safety, a chief, we had guys that moved on, went to college, and then we had guys, that got in trouble and winded up in the penal system or on drugs or, even dead. So, yeah, I got memories, and we all got memories, but we try to separate the good from the bad and just keep the good ones, because those are the ones that put a smile on your face. Those are the ones that keep us coming every year back. In 77, when I went in the service, Chichi was the president. When I came back in 1980, Benny was the president. Both of them were great presidents. They all had their different ways of leading, of teaching, disciplining. They both were good at what they did, but they was different. See, a good president would take you to a war and win. A great president will stop the war before it even begins. That's what Benny could do. He could stop a war before it even began. Yeah, Benny was more of a thinker. He would think things out. He would weigh the difference out. Not saying that Chichi wouldn't do that, but they led different. They were different types of leaders. So with that being said, to me, I find that he was a better leader for what he did and the time that he did it. The brother had charisma, smart, the girls, the people in this corner, he was just one of those types of leader that you would believe what he say, and if he tell you can go through that wall, you would believe that, and you probably would try to go through that wall. When the incident happened with Benny, that was the downfall to Ghetto Brother. After that, we never recuperated. Everybody lost the love, the trust, the brotherhood. It just wasn't there anymore. He also left some children behind, young enough where they never got to know him. So that being the case, today they ask, who was my father? What was his legacy? What could his legacy have been? And honestly, he could have done anything he wanted. That's how he was. Anything he wanted, anything that he think he could achieve, he would achieve. He was like the all-around guy. If you saw him, you wanted to be around him. If he walked, you wanted to walk with him. You believe what he told you. He will have you believe that you can walk through a wall, and you would try. Him being my best friend and the same age, we spent a lot of time together, and we would sit and talk, and he had all these great ideas that he wanted to do with the club, how he wanted to go with it, and he would bounce it off of me. He said, Goldie, what do you think? And I said, well, it might work. Let's see if it works. No, Goldie, well, I saw this. We can do this and this. Okay, let's try it. When I went in the Army, when I enlisted in 76, who followed right behind me? Benny did. When I came back, Benny was already back because they went National Guard. I went regular Army. So I was there almost 4 years. Well, when I got out and they got out, we took that training and brought it to the streets. And it was good for everybody because it was also discipline. And he liked that. I remember him walking down the street and we'd be walking, we'd be marching, he'd be counting cadence and we'd be falling in. And when we went to the meetings, we stood up in a formation, like in a military formation. It was something that really hadn't been done with the gangs here in Connecticut because, again, Connecticut's a small state. So there wasn't that much gang activity here. So to end this, I'm going to say we all miss him. We really, really do, because he was a great friend and a great leader, great teacher. And if you was to ask me, what do you think his legacy would be, or where would he be at now? I would think that he would have a job somewhere in corporate America, maybe working with youth as a counselor, gang prevention. To this day, we all mourn him. We all wish he was here. His kids never got to know him. His wife, she still suffering from it. The guys that did it, you know, they're out and people are still disappointed, hurt, but it happened so long ago. Some forgotten, some haven't, but we'll see. You know, deep down inside in our heart, we will always be ghetto brothers, because ghetto's the only thing we know. That's all we ever knew, that's all we ever wanted to be, and that's all that we ever were. But with that, I think we close the page on the Ghetto Brothers in Connecticut. I really want to take the time to thank my good friend King Klast. If you're a follower, and if you're not, I advise you, go on there and follow his documentary. He does a real good job with them, and he gives people the opportunity to tell their story, tell their history, and their lifestyle. Like I stated in the opening, he usually don't do out-of-state gangs, but he got in touch with me, and he had an interest of the Ghetto Brothers in Connecticut, and hopefully other gangs in Connecticut will do the same, follow suit. But like always, Ghetto Brothers has always been a leader, so we open the door. Now we need some of y'all to come and kick it in. Thank you, Jose, once again. God bless you. Que viva la raza.